Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Sunday, August the 10th. And welcome to our commentary. I hope everybody is having a good weekend. Well, the Texas show continues. I think we're actually starting now our second week. So I'm sure there'll be some other things going on next week. Not much happened today. As you may remember, they're not going to be the legislators who are out of town are not going to get their pay by direct deposit. They're going to have to pick up their check, kind of the old-fashioned way. There was some big news regarding Beto O'Rourke, and I have a post about this over at the American Thinker today because his organization, the Attorney General, was able to stop his organization from, I guess, raising money and funding some of the activities of the legislators who left Texas. So that's kind of the big story. And I think that Beto O'Rourke is suing back, but nothing has come of that. I guess maybe we'll have some news on that on Monday. But being Sunday, not a lot of stuff was going on. I assume that the legislators spent Sunday wherever they do, and everybody here in Texas did what we do on Sundays, and we'll see where this story goes on Monday. I'm sure it's going to go somewhere because um, what happened the last time? What happened the last time is a good indicator. Eventually, they run out of money, and I think they also exhaust public opinion. That's what I think happened the last time. After a while, people get tired of this and say, "Okay, come back, make your case here. Don't go speaking up in Chicago or San Francisco or wherever you are." And doing interviews up there because nobody's watching that. I mean, if you want to influence people, you're going to have to do it in Texas, not in Chicago or New York or whatever, doing, interviews with MSNBC and that kind of thing. That's not reaching people here in Texas. You got to come down here and, talk to the media here and go to the Capitol and make your case. That's how you do it. So I think my guess is that this will last another 10 days or so, probably another weekend, but eventually they're going to run out of money and have to come back and take a vote, and the maps will pass. And if they think that the maps discriminate, then what they need to do is they need to go to the state courts and challenge it. And that's frankly, that's the way to do it. That's why the courts are there. So we'll see what happens. But speaking of Beto O'Rourke, he's really become the outspoken face of this movement. And he's not even in the legislature, as you know. He's a private citizen now. I don't know what he does. I think he had a business of some type, but not completely sure. But he's kind of been the outspoken critic, and he gave a speech over the weekend in Fort Worth where he used a lot of bad language and basically said, to paraphrase him, basically said, forget about the rules. He's encouraging all the blue states to gerrymander all the way to, gerrymander everything to counter Republicans here in Texas. And of course, I'm assuming he thinks that it's going to happen in some other Republican states. But here's the problem. Here's the problem that the Democrats have. They just don't have that many more opportunities to gerrymander unless they want to have zero Republicans in California and zero Republicans in Illinois and zero Republicans in Maryland. They only have one to replace in Maryland. In Massachusetts, there aren't any Republicans. So there's nothing to gerrymander there. I mean, that's already zero. So that's their problem. And also, as I mentioned yesterday, and I learned over the weekend, this process of having to set up a commission and all of that in California takes a little bit more time than it did here in Texas. One of the beauties, I guess, of Texas is that we were able to do this. We simply create the maps, and the governor puts it up to a vote in the session. So that was pretty easy to do. That's why they're having a vote on those maps. That's not the way it gets done in California. It takes usually a lot longer there. I guess they have to have a special election to approve all of this. So I'm not saying they're not going to win the special election. They probably will because it's a very Democrat state. But it's not going to be as easy as it was here in Texas. And in California, they have 9 districts, I guess they could eliminate. If they want to balance out Texas, and I guess they have to eliminate 5 districts. So instead of the Republicans having 9 in California, they would now have 4. And I guess they could do it if they want to. Go right ahead and do it. No big deal. Go right ahead and do it, and we'll do it wherever we can, and we'll have the big battle of gerrymandering of 2025. Not the perfect way to do it, but that is how you play politics if the other side wants to play politics. One of the interesting things about our Governor Abbott here is that he always seems to break the Democrats. I don't know if you remember a few years ago when we started getting all of these people to crossing the border and they were coming into Texas, and we were complaining about it. And some of the other states were criticizing Texas because we were complaining about all of these people crossing the border. So the governor did something brilliant. He put them in a bus and he sent them to blue cities. And it didn't take long for a lot of blue cities to say, time out, we cannot handle this. So stop sending them. Time out, we just simply cannot handle them. And he ended up making the point that the Democrats are really good to talking about illegal immigration when the illegal immigrants are in Texas, not when they're in New York City or Chicago or wherever it may be. Well, once again, Governor Abbott has broken the Democrats, and it's about the maps. One of the brilliant things that this whole conversation has done is that it's forcing Democrats to show us their maps. So the American people are seeing the map of Illinois, for example, and seeing what a travesty that is. The map of Massachusetts, no Republicans in the U.S. House. And all of this is on TV. If you saw this morning, the governor of Illinois on Meet the Press, and, they were asking him, why are you criticizing Texas for doing what you're doing? Now, the governor said, well, what Texas is doing is denying voting rights, which is a bunch of garbage, because we're not denying anybody any voting rights. But on the other hand, in Illinois and in Massachusetts, Republicans are in fact being denied their fair share of congressional reputation. When you have the Republicans in Illinois getting in the low 40s, but they only have 3 out of the 17 legislators. In Massachusetts, 0 of the legislatures of the congressional representatives, or in Maryland, 1 out of 9 after getting like 40% of the vote. So in a way, what the governor did here, he has once again exposed the Democrats. Now the whole world can see that it's all a bunch of hypocrisy, that they play the same game. They do exactly the same thing that the Republicans do. So they're accusing us of doing what they do with specialty in blue states. As I've said many times, maybe there's a better way to do this. Maybe there is a nicer way to do this so that we don't have to gerrymander, but I haven't seen that. And these commissions that everybody keeps talking about, well, the commission in California, from what I understand, turned out to be heavily influenced by the Democrats. So I'm not sure what kind of a break the Republicans caught from that commission in California. So, maybe there's going to be a national commission. Maybe we'll have a national conversation someday. But for the time being, it's a political matter and will likely stay a political matter because none of the states want to give up their power. There's a tremendous amount of power that the state legislature has and the governor when you can draw up these districts. That's a lot of power that you have when you can do that. So why would you give that up and give it to a commission? So I don't see that happening. Again, as I said a minute ago, I would love to see a better way of doing this, but I don't see a better way of doing it. Creating a commission, who's going to decide who's on the commission? Okay, the legislature? Well, if it's the legislature, then you're right back in the same boat, because whoever runs the legislature will create the commission. So look, it's not a perfect system, but politics is politics, and just let it be. The voters selected these representatives and let them do whatever they want to do with the maps. The voters can always replace the representatives if they're not happy with the maps or they feel that the maps are unfair. And that's the way it is. That's the way politics is. Maybe not perfect, maybe not fair, but that's the way we've done it for a long time, and I think it's worked out pretty well for the country. Well, one thing that I wanted to leave you with, this is I just saw this, by the way, on this day in history in the year 30 BC. So that 30 years before Christ, that's a long time ago. Cleopatra apparently committed suicide on this day, 30 BC. Now, some people think it was actually August 12th, so I'm not sure whether it was the 10th or the 12th. How do you verify that? I'm not sure. But Cleopatra committed suicide on this day in 30 BC. So there you have it, Cleopatra. Probably most of you remember that movie with Elizabeth Taylor about Cleopatra. Frankly, that was the first time that I was exposed to it because of that movie. It's a great movie, by the way. And, other than that, obviously, I know that our friend Leslie Eastman, who's in our show many times, she often will bring up the question of Cleopatra. She's has a lot of information about her life and so on. Very interesting person, Leslie Eastman, who writes for Legal Insurrection. But anyway, Cleopatra, if you're into that kind of stuff, Cleopatra on this day in 12 or 30 BC committed suicide. There you have one of the most interesting characters in world history. Died on this day in 30 BC. Who would have believed? Who would have believed that? Well, thank you very much. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll talk tomorrow. I think we will be chatting with George Rodriguez tomorrow. We'll get an update on the situation here in Texas. Good night, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas.